7 out of the last 9 daily candles for Bitcoin are red. This is the Bitcoin daily chart. Bitcoin obviously in a period of consolidation. Crypto in general, just dipping. Embrace the dip. That is what is on my mind right now. Embrace the dip. None of us like or enjoy red candles to the downside. But that word enjoy, it says it all right there. We shouldn't be paying attention to the emotional side of what's taking place on this chart right here. We should be paying attention to the data-driven perspective of what's occurring right now. And with that being said, the move that we see happening is 100% normal. And I want to just discuss targets. I want to discuss support, what might happen next for Bitcoin on this chart. But I really want to give some perspective in terms of why this is such a good thing. So please hit the subscribe, hit the like. Let's jump into the video. I started with this. 7 daily candles on this chart out of the last 9, right? Because that's the thing. People are zoomed in. People are kind of like, man, there's a bunch of red happening. We just broke the 20-day moving average. But let me flip the perspective a little bit. Let's go and look at the monthly chart. 7 out of the last 7 monthly candles green. I don't know how this candle will close, the candle we're currently in right now. It's, still 9 days left on the monthly candle right here. But 7 out of the last 7 candles are green. We're not even at Bitcoin halving yet. You go back cycles, here's the last halving. You can see Bitcoin just consolidating into halving, not breaking all-time high for one, right, of the previous bull market going into the halving. You can even go back to the cycle before that. We're going to talk about 2017 a little bit in this video, but you can just see Bitcoin going into halving. Strong move into halving, but then consolidation right through the halving. We're going to talk about that in this video. Bitcoin not breaking all-time high. Bitcoin not breaking the bull market doors until really months later on this chart. And then we go back to this time where Bitcoin was very volatile, right? And we're talking about 2012 halving. Even look back then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is the last time Bitcoin had 7 monthly candles going kind of into the halving. And that was a time where Bitcoin was like $4, right? A very just volatile time for Bitcoin, whether to the downside or upside. But here we are. Bitcoin is above $60,000 with institutional demand coming in, interested in the crypto space, and Bitcoin's putting in a move like that. That's some perspective. And this is before the halving. So that's some zoomed out perspective as we do start digging into kind of what's going on in the daily and what to anticipate next. But I want to talk about some things. There are around 28 days left until Bitcoin halving. Now that's an important data piece, especially as we start comparing some data. I came across this post a little bit ago from Michael over here on X. In some way, the price action of Bitcoin is comparable to 2016 to 17 cycle. Peak 4 weeks before the halving takes place, consolidation and another correction, after which a slow upward grind happens until acceleration 6 months later. I'm not sure if we have to wait 6 months until an acceleration to the upside, but I do want to point out something that he's saying, and that is the comparison between that 2016-17 cycle to what we're seeing now, because there are a lot of similarities. If we go to the weekly chart, and we go back here to 2016 halving. Here's the 2016 halving. You can just see Bitcoin running up very nicely into that halving. And if I just zoom out, I want to just compare the last 3 cycles as far as momentum oscillators go. Here's where we are now, right? Here's the next Bitcoin halving happening. Here's where we are in the RSI, the slower moving momentum oscillator right here. Now, if we look at last halving, this is where Bitcoin was. This is Bitcoin on the halving. Look at Bitcoin on the RSI. Completely different vibe in terms of momentum. And then if we go back to the 2017 Bitcoin halving and this run up that Bitcoin had, where's Bitcoin? Overbought on the RSI prior to the halving, around 4 weeks before the halving. And we're in a very similar territory. Overbought on the Bitcoin, or going into Bitcoin halving, a really similar vibe in terms of momentum. But what I want to point out to you is this, and this applies anywhere, whether it's 2012, whether it's 2016, whether it's even back here, the last bull market. Look at, and we're going to look at 2016 Bitcoin halving and the consolidation of Bitcoin. Look at the volatility. It is what it is, right? So here we're in that overbought territory, similar to where we are right now. Swing high right there. into the halving. As bullish as an event as it is on the macro, for the macro, the longer term story of Bitcoin, Bitcoin's still retraced through the halving, right? 40% over the course of like a couple of months. And you can see that right there. So that swing high to swing low around 40%, and then it was a continuation to the upside. So from that alone, we can go over to where we are right now on Bitcoin and look at the move just on the weekly. It's kind of like, and I've spoken about this a lot. We've been pretty spoiled thus far to just, you see a lot of people out there that become very bearish because we start getting a dip. Not only is it just normal, right? And so far, if we look at the weekly, we are down around 14%. Remember that 2017 move into halving ultimately went down around 40%. That would bring Bitcoin to around $44,000. Is it possible? 100% it's possible. And here's the thing. This is the point I'm trying to make. And I'm not saying I think that's going to happen. I'm going to talk about where to watch for support along that journey. But the point I'm trying to make is if Bitcoin did what it did pretty much every cycle, right? And especially in comparison to the cycle of 2017, and we're hitting $44,000, it would be normal. But you have things like this happening on the weekly. The 50 just crossed above the 200 week moving average, and this was back in January, the beginning of the year, right? So we have this major macro shift in terms of cycles. Bitcoin just overextended from those moving averages along the way. If Bitcoin is going to have like a multi-month consolidation, and again, I'm not sitting here saying that's going to happen. I'm going to talk about what to anticipate and watch for. But even if it did, and it starts retracing to these moving averages down here, or maybe slowly consolidating and pulling the moving averages up to Bitcoin, that is a very normal move. And on the macro, zoomed out at the end of the day, we could look at these charts a year from now and see, man, this is important. This was an important move, an important consolidation before continuation, right? And this is just the way markets move. And all that you have to do is leave the daily chart or a zoomed in 4 hour or zoomed in daily, go to a Bitcoin weekly chart and zoom out and just notice whether it's a bull market or a bear market, there are a ton of red candles. There are just a ton of red candles. That's the market in which we are living in. That's the reality of the market. And you look at any chart, right? That's the reality of markets. They're going to go up and then they're going to go down and consolidate. They're going to go into overbought and then they're going to fall into oversold. And if we're talking about that, right, we zoom out on the daily because here's the daily move that we're zoomed in on. If we actually go back and we look at, okay, like for instance, right now, here's the 2020 bull market doors being broken. If we go back and we look at the 2017 move that we're discussing, look at this. This is what Bitcoin was doing before the halving, right? Huge consolidation. Look at this move. 30% dip, bounce, and then ultimately there's that 40% move or so, continuation to the upside. And then even at the bull market door area, this lower high Fibonacci rectangle that you see here, look at this volatility. Look at that, 34% dip. Here's more volatility, 30% dip before continuing. And just take a note, Bitcoin halving is all the way back here at that moment. And all of this happening was months later, right? So if we go and we look at the Bitcoin chart currently on the daily, as I scroll over, check this out. Bitcoin's broken the bull market doors before the Bitcoin halving, and we're in this consolidation right now for Bitcoin. Now, in terms of support and all these areas to watch for, it's something I've talked about before, right? It's in a bull market. The very first range I'm looking at is the 20-day moving average and the 50, right? So if we could just build like a channel right here, I'm watching this range to see if there could be support because very often Bitcoin will just get overextension, pull somewhere in that range, and then continue to the upside, a higher low. If that's not the case, right? And by the way, again, I'm going to zoom all the way back, right, to this 2017 move. Notice how Bitcoin didn't respect that range very well, right? It tried to right here, ultimately falling all the way down to the 200. That's in play. That's always something in play. But in a bull market, it is, I think, and you can look at the last bull market. Look how Bitcoin respected that 20 and 50-day moving average range. We can always look at that area as kind of this first area range of support, right? And that's what I'm doing. But putting that aside, if we look at what else is going on the chart, there's a lot going on this chart. And that would be number one, the bull market doors, this lower high Fibonacci that Bitcoin broke through on the macro. This is what it looks like on the daily. Bitcoin revisiting this area is not out of the equation. That's in the $57,000 area at the upper end of the bull market doors. We talk about that. But even look at the confluence at this moment of the higher end of the bull market doors around 57,000 and this upper trend line of that rising wedge that we've been tracking, still a target to the upside of 85,000. I think a picture perfect move for Bitcoin, and I don't know if it's going to happen, would just very simply be if it just does kind of hit. And by the way, those are two confluent points, right? The upper end of the bull market doors, the upper trend line. But look what else is there. This 50-day moving average is right in that range as well. There's like this 3-point of confluence right there. If Bitcoin just kind of hangs out, maybe consolidates a little bit more into the upper 50s, and then actually gets support there and continues to the upside, it'd be ridiculous. That's the picture perfect technical move. But we know we're in this environment of volatility. Crypto is incredibly volatile, and we have to anticipate, what could happen outside of what we want to see happen, right? So there's that support, though. I would really call that $58,000 area. If Bitcoin keeps falling, I'd be curious to see what happens there. But again, volatile. Don't be surprised if this is just a multi-week, even a multi-month move to the downside. We're testing this range. People are getting fearful. It would be like previous cycles all over again, where Bitcoin is just like, man, huge consolidation. But again, there is a lot of demand for Bitcoin right now. And the Bitcoin halving has not even happened yet, right? So I think we're still early in this cycle. I'll say it again. We've been very spoiled. So the way that we cool off is something we're just going to have to buckle up and try to enjoy the ride, right? We know where support is. We have the apex of the rising wedge. We have the bull market doors all down here. As you know, the bottom range of the bull market doors around 48,000. And we have to track Bitcoin. On the short term, I saw this post, the Wolf of All Streets, prepare for inverse head and shoulders posts across your timeline in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There are going to be, I thought it was funny because there's going to be posts. And he's right. There's going to be posts about it because it is there. There's an inverse head and shoulders on, this is a 4-hour chart. That's a hopium chart. There's going to be cases for, Bitcoin's in a short-term consolidation before the upswing. That's possible. And this is something fun we can track. We can see if it holds the inverse head and shoulders. Even right now, it's trying to put in the higher low as I do the video, right? And we're talking about, you can even look at swing low, the head of this inverse head and shoulders to this swing high right around the neckline. And you can just see Bitcoin right at this short-term higher low Fibonacci range, that green rectangle. It's a 618 to 786. You can see Bitcoin trying to put in a higher low. It's fun to track to see if it holds, but I definitely would not bank on this. I really think at this stage, it is a good idea to look at, maybe we get the inverse head and shoulders here on the daily or on the 4-hour. You see it on the daily and it breaks out. Bitcoin goes up, right? The target, by the way, on that inverse head and shoulders is like around $76,000 to $77,000. We can watch that, but it's the more macro support areas that are consistent with previous cycles that I think are a good idea to watch. We're in a downtrend right now. Let's watch for those support areas. We can keep an eye on crazy bullish short-term reversals like an inverse head and shoulders. People will be talking about, I'm sure, but this is what's happening on the zoomed out. The chart, if you just look at it, even on the midterm daily, it just looks like it's just doing what Bitcoin does. People don't like red candles. People like up only. It gives them that feeling of, man, we're going to all-time high. We're going to price discovery again. Like, this is getting crazy. They like that feeling, right? That's the human nature of it. But if you just look at the data, it really helps you visualize. This is what I do. This is me, how I see these charts. This is my crypto journey. This helps me visualize what's normal in this environment. And instead of zoomed in all the time, because I can get distracted as well. Instead of zoomed in, this is the data perspective I need to maintain kind of a healthy balance, a healthy outlook on the direction of these markets. We have time. The Bitcoin halving not even happening yet. Bitcoin could do what it did in 2017, consolidate into the halving before continuing to the upside once again, the next leg up. I don't want that to happen, but it could, and it would be normal. Those are my thoughts as Bitcoin is dipping, crypto dipping. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, everybody. I appreciate you. If you're not a subscriber, please hit the subscribe, turn notifications on, doing these Bitcoin videos, crypto news, altcoins, all that good stuff. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'll see you in the next video. God bless.